Well, hello and welcome to Work Cookie, our weekly gathering of IOs, HRs, recruiters, and an actor or two as we try to make the world of work just a little bit better. Jeremy, here we are, and today we're going to talk about from stagnation to success, remove your good habit barriers. I am all ears because I've decided 2025 is going to be a year of, taking on better habits, adjusting my workflow, just trying to get more down to more of an essential me. So I have lots of bad habits that I need to get rid of, and I need to embrace those good habits to succeed. So where do I begin?
I'm going to start with a thought I had, and then I've got a ton of notes. So I'm going to start going through those in the show notes, and soon here in the chat once I have ability, I'll put in the references for today. And if you're and there's also the some habit tracking sheets
Oh, good.
there for everyone. So I was thinking about this, and this we've been talking about the Ogmandino book, and I've been really trying to pay attention to the habit changes I've seen, the removal of bad habits, the beginning of good habits, and I constantly have talking to everyone here in mind. And one thought I had, and I could be wrong. I wrote down: don't have a goal, have a habit that gives you a sense of fulfillment and helps you grow. Once that habit is a habit, you'll be able to accomplish any goal. And I think because I didn't, the habits, the good habits that I've created were not based on any goal. They were based on this is what I want to do. This will make my tomorrow better than today. And this will give me a sense of fulfillment while I'm doing it. It'll be time or a decision or a behavior well spent. And I'll look back on that and feel good about it. And everything else just seems to fall into place. So I'll just repeat and take it with a grain of salt. Don't have a goal. Have a habit that gives you a sense of fulfillment and helps you grow. Once that habit is a habit, you'll be able to accomplish any goal. So there's a habit. There's actually a habit tracker available. There's an article. It's called "Making Health Habitual: The Psychology of Habit Formation and General Practice." There's a habit tracker in there. You can find a habit tracker anywhere. You can do an internet search. You can create your own. It's pretty easy to do. Um, so looking at some, we always start with some info in an article. Habit formation starts with an initiation phase in which a new behavior and context in which it will be done are selected. Basically, environment, some kind of a trigger, and then the habit. So any automation of a new habit development develops in the learning phase in which the behavior is repeated. Then you have to self-monitor, and then it becomes a stable habit. So I was thinking about this because the initiation phase requires you to be motivated to begin a habit. So, are you dissatisfied with something currently? That's how you become motivated. And you can start to form that habit. A lot of people would like to, in the article they mentioned, a lot of people would like to eat healthier um, or take more exercise if doing so were easy. And I thought it's not a habit naturally will be hopefully be one that you find enjoyment in because it's that inherent, and this is what the other studies say, it's that inherent motivation and that intrinsic reward. So if your habit by doing it, if you're not enjoying doing it, uh, or don't envision yourself ever be happy doing it, maybe you think of a different habit that's a little different. And I thought about this, like think about any time in your life when you've actually grown for the better. It probably wasn't during an easy time. It's during these times that we're challenged. That's when we grow. It's not the best parallel, but I heard this quote the other day about really spending quality time with kids. Kids never remember their best time on the couch. And I thought that was and do we? No, we don't. We never remember our best time on the couch. So it might be something that's hard to do or a habit that's hard to do, but find a habit that at least gives you some or will give you some uh, of a best time that you might actually remember. Um, the other thing with habits, because we're talking about barriers, and I have a list of questions and some 1 through 6 of fill in the blanks for everyone. So in the article, they mentioned variation may stave off boredom. but it's effort. It takes a lot of effort, and it depends on maintaining motivation. And maintaining motivation isn't really easy when you're talking about the automation of habits. So variation isn't good, in other words. So instead of I'll eat healthier foods each night, it's like break that thing down to the ridiculous. I'll eat 2 apples after dinner as a snack. That's it. Just do that. That's it. Make that habit and then go on. Because a lot of people will go out. How many of us have gone out? Oh, it's January. I'm gonna get vegetables. I'm gonna get all kinds of good stuff. I might even throw out some ice cream, whatever. And then everything rots in the refrigerator because there's so much variation. You haven't narrowed it down to a very specific action. And in the article, they say simpler actions become habit more quickly. So if you do just a single behavior, it'll give you confidence. Then you can make another simple behavior a habit. And then soon you'll have this string of good habits. And here's what happens, they start to interfere, I think, with your bad habits. And isn't that a way? Ogmandino says, if I must be a slave to habit, let I be a slave to good habit. And I remember that. And what's the title? Remove good habit barriers. Well, one good habit barrier is bad habits. So if you start to form a micro habit, then another one, eventually they interfere and break down that barrier of the bad habit. I got lots to say, kind of, maybe Tom, but I'm going to throw it back to you because I see some hands raised.
Thank you very much. And yeah, Jeremy, this is making a lot of sense to me. So thank you very much for this. LindaAnn, let's go to you.
I love what you said, Jeremy, about breaking it down to micro habits. And I think that that's really, really critical because so often people say, well, I'm going to get in shape this, and I'm going to start running or whatever I'm going to do. Right. And it becomes, well, I don't have that half hour, that 45 minutes or whatever it is. And so just, park farther from the grocery store. Park, instead of circling to find that close parking space. Or, just do something. Something is better than nothing. Years ago when I used to go to this gym, and I was in remarkable shape at the time. And I would come in and I'd be there for 20 minutes and they would look at me and go, how do you stay in shape and you're only here for 20 minutes? That's because I would go religiously, and sometimes I was doing mental gymnastics to get my butt there, but something was better than nothing, right? Anything that you do and make that choice, it's better than nothing. And so when you're standing in front of the refrigerator trying to decide, and people often go, they feel like they're deprived if they're going to try to eat healthier or something like that. And it's not that you can't ever have that piece of cake again. It's just right now you're making a different choice. You can have it if you want. You're just choosing right now to make a different choice. And if you want it at 8 o'clock tonight, you can still have it, right?
Does delayed gratification work? If I go, I'm going to save that treat for later, but first I'm going to do this. Does that actually work, or am I just setting myself up to? No, I'll just go to the treat.
I think it's just that, if you say, okay, it's not that I can't have it, I'm choosing to do something different, right? And it's not a restriction. It's just a different choice.
And it empowers you to make that choice, which would make me actually feel good.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Thank you very much for that. Lee, let's go to you.
A lot of times, making that choice, it's the mental gymnastics that we put ourselves through. Part of my time in the Navy, I was one of the fitness trainers. And so I had to help people to get into standards and stay there. And I would have people try to do things, they would bargain with themselves. And they would try to do things like, well, I'm still going to have a candy bar, but I'm going to have a bite of the candy bar, and then I'm going to put it away, and then I'll have another bite tomorrow. Yeah, that works well. And so, because it's already open and it's there and it's in the thing. And it's like, no. So let's try a different strategy. So let's get some of the small candy bars. And then you can have an entire candy bar. And then you get the small one and you bring the small one with you to work and you have just the one and it's gone. And your brain says, I had a full candy bar and it's done and I can't sneak another bite later. So you're still giving yourself that reward or whatever, but you're not tempting yourself with the previous behavior of, well, it's just one more bite. And then you get the guilt and, oh, I meant to do that. And, I was going to have a bite and I ended up having 6 bites and the Snickers is gone, and now I got to buy another one because I don't have any more for the rest of the week, and you have this whole cycle. And, and one thing that, and it's admirable because, I want to get in shape or whatever else. But, one of the reasons that resolutions fail is because people come up with these grandiose things, but they don't define it. I'm going to get into shape. Well, I'm here to tell you, round is a shape, my friends. You got to be specific. And so what does that mean? And so, like LindaAnn said, park further from, you should just kill me watching people damn near get into a wreck in the parking lot trying to park closer to the gym. Are you serious right now? I've seen people say, okay, what is the best workout? Well, I'm gonna tell you, the best workout is the one you do. And what is that? Is it going to an aerobics class? Is it walking the dog? Is it, half an hour of heavy weights? Well, I can't answer that for you. I hate lifting weights. I've done it many times in my life, but it's not my thing. I have, I'm sure I will again, but that's not what I enjoy. I'm with LindaAnn. I love skiing. Now, there's not much skiing in Memphis, but, but if that's what you like to do, get out and do that and make that time. And you can make those changes and you can make them incremental, and there's those things that you can do and you can break them down into, small bite-sized pieces and you can create those habits. And see, what people don't understand is that, there's neuroscience behind this. There's a lot of research, man. When you create a habit, it creates neural pathways in your brain. You create a physical change in your brain when you create a habit. And when you extinguish a habit, those created pathways eventually change. That's why it's so hard to change a habit, because you have a pathway created in your brain. That's why you really can't change habits. But you can create a new habit that will eventually extinguish that old habit. Like Jeremy said, they contradict each other. So create a new habit that causes you not to do the old habit, and then just replace it. And it takes a little bit of, strategery, right? You gotta get in there and you gotta really kind of think through it. And I do like the, not so much doing the goals thing as creating a habit. And I mean, you could argue creating a habit is a goal, but some people get all crazy with the idea of goals, and then they get all, wrapped around the axle on all of that. So, there's definitely some mental gymnastics going on there you got to work through.
Well, thanks very much for that, Lee. And I love the idea of, sort of a better brain, better health. It does feel a little bit like we're talking about Tom's struggles. And the big problem with those little candy bars is you have to buy a whole box. And then, that second one calls to you after you've eaten the first one. So I got more work to do. Better habits. Thanks very much for that, Lee. Nick, let's go to you.
Yeah, it took me back for just a second when Jeremy says, don't set goals, because that feels very counterintuitive. But if you're trying to shift to attitudes and principles, as we've talked about, and kind of lay the bedrock and the foundation of who you want to be down the road, then the goals aren't so much the end, but they're the signposts that you are getting to that life that you're trying to create. And I take this out of my master's program. If you're designing an experiment, if you're trying to nail down, a high concept thing, you begin with the end in mind. If you're trying to say what is good employee engagement, well, what does that look like? What are the traits that we're trying to see? And I think that sort of vision casting and then working backwards can be very helpful. If I want to be a person who is healthy, okay, we've got to define what healthy is. Is that going to the gym 3 times a week? Is that, watching what you eat? Is that, limiting screen time? All of these things that are healthy habits that are great, and they do kind of bump into each other, and there's a certain level of cascade that can happen. But you've got to say, okay, this is what I mean by healthy. This is the direction that I'm going. And, if you have it as more of a signpost rather than a destination, then it's easier to shift whether things are successful or failures. You're not like, I have to get to this place. I have, we're driving to wherever. And that's the end goal. Once I get there, then I'll be happy. Well, there's this mythical land of someday where everything is going to be exactly perfect. And, it's simply not. There's no one thing. There's no magic bullet. But I think when you do kind of try and shift it to a mindset that there's more flexibility, there's more forgiveness. It's not the destination, it's the journey, to be kind of cheesy on that level. But it's the process of going through. If I want to drop 15 pounds, well, that's the signpost. But if I'm miserable doing it because I don't want to do cardio every day, then maybe I need to find a different way to lose point. And I think it does open up that self-talk, that autonomy, because you have to police yourself from yourself. The best intentions in a vision session are great, but when you're really faced with that dilemma of, do I eat the lunch I brought with me to work, or do I go to the cafeteria and get the burger? Like, you've got to plan for those eventualities where your willpower, your decision fatigue is going to kick in, and you're not going to make the right choice because it's not had it yet. And that's where you get these micro habits and try and hijack those pathways that Lee was talking about, where, you have to have a plan for when things go out of plan.
Don't most people, like, as I'm listening to this morning, I'm thinking, geez, most people get it wrong because, we've just gone through New Year's. People are making their resolutions. People are still setting goals. But as, the panel talks about just creating habits, it makes them a lot more sense to me. And, forming a good habit seems a lot easier than a goal or a New Year's resolution. So, just like we always say, hire an IO psychologist, most of us seem to be going down the wrong path. We're still setting goals. We still have those New Year's resolutions. So, where can, besides Work Cookie, which people should always be listening to, where can we find some of that information? I mean, should we contact an IO psychologist? Are there, IO psychologists who specialize in good habit creation? Or is that something that, pretty much any IO psychologist could help with?
Is that to me,
That's
Tom?
you, Nick. Well, we'll go to you, Jeremy, since you're next anyway.
Nick, I'm going to give you a lead of about 5 seconds to think about this, and then I'm going to throw it back to you, because since it was your original question. And I'm pausing. I'm doing what Tom does, is buying time for the other person to think, because Tom, you're so good at that, and I'm trying to do that too. So, all right, Nick.
I mean, it's certainly a skill set to think about, reframing goals. There's obviously a lot of research, neurologically and all of that. Again, it's that buyer beware, because there's articles and there's evidence everywhere. You have to sift through it and really think what applies to you. Much like we talked last month about job searching, there's a ton of advice out there. It starts to feel like dating advice, where there's very situational things and people mean the best and it's what works for them. But you have to know the difference between reading a well-intentioned blog post versus peer-reviewed research and things like that. So the information abounds. I don't know that IO has a corner on the market for it. But I think there are people who, in studying organizations and studying individuals, have kind of gathered some of those pearls to say, okay, well, this is some recommended reading. These are some things that I've noticed in my studies and what's worked for me as I've set up my own habits.
Well, thank you very much for that. Jeremy, let's back to you, and then LindaAnn will come to you next. Because Jeremy, that kind of leads me to to another thought. Social media, I'm always getting advertisements for these magical little gummies that, are going to help me lose weight. And I'm wondering now, Is there sort of any magic gummy out there that's going to help me create good habits?
The magic, it's so, I'm going to find this quote from this other Ogmandino book that I just finished, and I'll come back with it. But that's kind of that's going to be the answer. So we're going to hold that one. You mentioned like where in terms of IO psychology. If you can find an IO psychology, I just speak from experience, who's an executive coach, that's probably a good person to help with the habits and the habit formation. I mean, you go look for a coach, you're going to get, you never know what you're going to get. And even with you, if you get an IO as a coach, every coach is completely different. So you still never know what you're going to get. But we do have, again, we look at the evidence-based aspect, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to share one way to look at it, because I'm going to ask a number of questions. It's basically an exercise that you can walk yourself through. There was a guy I coached, and I remember asking him something to the effect of, when do you know that, how do you know that things are good for you? And I was going towards some kind of a hobby or some kind of a habit. I said, when do things seem to fall into place and your work towards your goal is actually working? When do you know that? And he said, when I'm cooking. If I'm cooking a couple times a week, that was his thing. So that was his habit. So that kind of goes back to, if there's some connection there. So maybe if you're looking for, ABC, maybe the 1, 2, 3 is, for him, it's cooking. Maybe it's make sure you cook 3 times a week, and everything else will fall into place because your head's in the right space, and on and on and on. And everyone has what that different thing is for them. So back to that article quick. You can't, what's it say? You have to have a new behavior rather than give up an existing behavior. Because I found this quite insightful. It's duh, but it's insightful. It's not possible to form a habit for not doing something. You can't have a habit to not do something. So it's really about, again, it's overcoming the good habit barriers. And I think eventually they just start to interfere with your bad habits. And maybe the only way to actually to do this is to sit down and have some deep work. Be thoughtful about it, even if it's 10 or 15 minutes. A lot of people don't have the time or don't make the time or ability to sit down for 10 minutes and write. And that in itself can be a habit. If you have a barrier to a good habit, you're not really going to realize it until you sit down and you have some quality thinking time. I'm writing myself a note because something I had lost came back. So there's 1 through 6. Think about what your good habits would be. So again, this is what you might do during your thinking time. You're writing it down. Think about what your good habits would be that would make tomorrow better than today, and each consecutive day better than what you are experiencing and living now. Then list all the barriers that are keeping you from forming and keeping that good habit. Then list what keeps those barriers in place. Is it the environment? Is it timing? Is it personal desire? Fear? Probably part of it's fear. External forces, internal forces. Then you simply create a problem statement like, it's tough to remove this barrier because. Then you simply go with, all right, the creative ways I could remove this barrier include. And then you can simply decide how you will remove each barrier. It's a very simple exercise that one can go through. And we look at what are those things? Like, why does it become tough to remove these barriers? And some of it, like Lee was talking about, lack of clarity and vague goals. And how can you have a very specific, actionable objective, even down, like we were talking before, eat 2 apples exactly, instead of having a fridge full of good food, of healthy food? How do you break it down to a single behavior? The other thing is instant gratification and delayed rewards. I mean, let's face it, we can get anything at a touch of a button now. A lot of the really beneficial habits require a sustained effort over time before you actually start to notice results. And then people get frustration. They throw it out the window. They abandon whatever habit or even goal that it could be. So a simple question would be, how do I gain the patience for a sustained effort and wanting to see the results? I think for a lot of people, it's saying, it's basically telling your everything. I think most things in our lives, it's A, validation, and B, just had it. A, validation, and B, some little bit of a mind game, but not too much of a mind game because then we start to go crazy. Like Serenity Now and Sanity Later from Seinfeld, if you remember that one. But how do I gain the patience for sustained effort and waiting to see the results? Say to yourself, I don't care about seeing the results. I am going to just enjoy the habit. I'm going to feel good about just doing it. That's it. If you can maybe do something like that, again, I asked this question. What I just suggested, is it better than what we've been doing? Or is it better than what you've been doing? Maybe, maybe not. It's something different. And if everything else isn't working, why not say to yourself, look, I've been impatient. It's going to take me a long time to see the results. Say, screw the results. I hate the results. I just will enjoy this actual behavior. Next, we have inconsistent routines. You've got to have really a predictable environment. All the studies that I looked at, everyone did good, and then the weekend came, or then they had to go somewhere, they had to travel. So you have to have some kind of a predictable environment to have habit formation. So you might say, okay, how is my current environment predictable? When does my environment change and make it unpredictable? How can I create predictability in my environment? Again, just sitting down, thinking about these times. And believe it or not, maybe your answers to these questions are just completely, maybe they're not the best. It doesn't matter. You're still having touch points with habits. Just having the touch points gets you closer to it. It's like what Nick said. You're shopping for a new car. Yeah, they say you're looking for a Tahoe. Oh my gosh, you start to realize more Tahoes on the road. There's a couple more, if I may. Internal resistance and self-sabotage. We procrastinate. We have fear of failure, or just discomfort, and we have past failures. So it's very simple. You're asking, how do I let go of past failures, and how do I realize today's a new day? By now, any failures I've had in the past, I've mulled over. I've kicked myself over. Trust me, those lessons have been learned. Picture them in a trash bag and just throw them out. You've learned your lessons. Forget about past failures. The only thing they're going to do is weigh you down. And that's not good for you. And that's not good for anyone. And here's where the validation that I mentioned earlier comes into play. It's okay for you to just let them go and start a new day. You've learned your lesson. You know you have. So it's okay. Let go of your past failures. Who cares? Give yourself a break. Just start new. Another reason why it's again, we're talking about barriers to good habits is a lack of support and accountability. Habits are it can be a lonely journey if you don't have a support system. Some people thrive when they have some kind of friends, some kind of community doing these habits together. If that's you, you might say, all right, who would benefit from being on this journey with me? Not who can, well, hold on. Maybe not who can hold me accountable. Maybe they don't want to hold you accountable. If they don't want to, they're not going to do it. So how do you benefit them? What's in it for them? Who would benefit from being on this journey with me? And how can I gauge them and create a better tomorrow for the both of us? Again, just some different thoughts. Existing habits, changing old behaviors requires, again, it's a lot of habit and adjustment. It's challenging. Maybe it's, all right, when's my willpower at its highest? Our willpower is always at its highest in the morning. So is our cognition, everything. First 2 hours when you wake up. I always tell people like, I want to start a new business. When should I work on it? Work on it in the morning. By the end of the day, you've given all your oomph to your job. Wake up early, work on your new business for 2 hours. So maybe that is when you start to do this habit. That does work for a lot of people. So then another question, how am I willing to finally kill the very bad habit that I have and just replace it with a new habit to make my tomorrow better? And the last one, it's really kind of what I was saying earlier, insufficient rewards and motivation. We expect to be rewarded because we put in an effort for something. And if we don't see, again, back to before, the immediate results, we're not going to be persistent. And this is where, just to reiterate, the reward in itself is simply the practice of the habit. And that act itself it will feel better, and it's a better feeling of success than any potential reward you might have down the road. Tom, back to you.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. This sounds great. This sounds doable. I think I now need you to write the book about how to change my habits. But it's not a magic gummy. I mean, it sounds doable, but is there any magic gummy out there that's going to help me with better habits?
No, there's not. But you'll find a system that works for you. What's always worked for me, it's a habit within a habit. So if I've done this many times, and it works well. I just create a spreadsheet and a checklist, much like almost identical to the Ogmandino spreadsheet with the checklist that we've shared. And sometimes, I wake up every morning, it's sitting on my computer, and I just run down the checklist. Did I do something? Yes or no? Did I not do something? Yes or no? And at one time, I don't know, I had like 20 things on my list. And then I redid it because that's a lot to go through. But I'm doing this even with the Ogmandino one. And it's simply having the touch points with it. It's having the reconnection with it. Maybe you did the habit, maybe you didn't. But oddly, this is where like Og is talking about, read the scroll 3 times a day for a month, and it'll seep into your mysterious mind. That's kind of what happens with the checklist. Is all of a sudden throughout the day, the checklist is in your mysterious mind, and you just remember, oh, I want to check this tomorrow, so I'll read that. So for me, an Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet works really well. Is there a magic gummy? No, but really, how hard is it to say I'm gonna eat? There's no magic gummy, but there's a lot of magic gummies that are going against us, right? It's like this army of gummies with little tiny swords and hammers, like, pounding us every day. How hard is it really? We're our own worst enemy. And this is where I got to go find this quote, which I'll come back to my seat in a second. How hard is it to say, I'm going to get up. I don't have to go run a mile every day, but I'm just going to put my shoes on and I'm just going to go run around the block. That could take literally 5 minutes. But then you either increase your time, you do whatever. But we are our own worst enemy. And it's really, we put ourselves through some. I'm going to go get this quote. Tom, back to you.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. LindaAnn, let's go to you.
My reaction to your request for a gummy was exactly the same as Lee's. No, but there's some gummies that'll make you not care about your habits, right? So,
Yes, there are.
I think for me, one of the most important things is there's a lot of people who have mindless habits, right? Where they're not paying attention. They do their habits out of habit, right?
Yeah.
And so becoming present about what you're doing at any given time, and then making a choice at that time is powerful for you. Right. And I remember hearing somebody go, because they had lost weight or whatever, and they said, yeah, I do this instead of stopping at the fast food restaurant on the way home. That thought never occurs to me, to go stop at a fast food restaurant. And so it's just how you've conditioned your mind. But I think you also need to understand how your brain works. For example, there is no amount of money in a group of people that's going to motivate me to go do my workout, right? That solely comes intrinsically. But I know that there are people that it does motivate, right? And so you have to understand yourself about what is going to work for you, and those, I find lists, I've learned, long time ago that lists can be very defeating for me. I know Jeremy said it was working for him, but if you create this list, right, and as you walk by the little paper, you write down everything every time you think of something. And then you go, okay, I'm going to get stuff done today. And then you look at your list at the end of the day and damn, I got nothing on that list done. But I feel like I was productive or worked or whatever. And so I remember years ago, I started creating a did list, right? And so, because if you look at your list and you didn't get anything done, that's a defeating behavior, right? But when you put down what you did spend your time on, does two things. It makes you understand how you spent your time. And then, then it has a positive impact. If you got some things done, you move forward incrementally on anything. It creates a different reward system, right? And I know one of the things that we have to, I think it's very difficult for us in a lot of cases is to not beat ourselves up. You know, one of the things on Jeremy's list is from the scrolls is to avoid judgment. And when we beat ourselves up, we just become demotivated. Yeah. You know, and there was one other thing that I wanted to, everybody, we all have the exact same amount of time, right? And so when we look at how the words of, I don't have the time to do X, you do have the time to do X if it's important enough to you. Yeah. It's all the choices that you make about how you're spending your time, you know, and we do get out of the habit of our habits. You know, I had some work going on in my house and my house was in chaos for like 3 months and I didn't exercise, you know, and exercise is a big part of my life. And I was telling my daughter the other day, because I needed to get back into the habits and start doing it, but I didn't want to just go full blast because then I'd be too sore to continue the habit, right? I had to do it really small so that I would continue to do it. But I said to my daughter, I said, man, I've never felt this old because I felt like, because I hadn't exercised. And like I said, well, of course, I've never been this old either, but.
Yeah, I have a whole different body now than I had when I was 20.
But I don't typically have aches and pains just because I just, and I do, and I don't do like a crazy workout. I just move every day, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people just have stopped moving and we don't move enough. Thank you very much for that. Tim, good to see you again. Let's go to you.
Yeah, and LindaAnn, thank you for that segue, because what I wrote down throughout the process of this was advice given to me by my mentor when I was finishing up the dissertation. And she's like, Tim, just give yourself some grace. And that, non-denominationally, it was just meant give yourself a break, give yourself, it's okay. It's part of the process. And that very succinct statement has brought me such a peace of mind and allowed me to carry on, to move forward with all of the issues, and not beat myself up. So again, LindaAnn, thank you for that, because we start to beat ourselves up and we are our own worst critics. And, you know, I don't think that we would tolerate what people, if someone said to us what we have in our mind and tell ourselves, we would not accept that. So just a very short, quick quips to say, give yourself some grace, take a pause, allowed me to carry on. And I, in turn, have given that advice to so many other people. Yeah. So, and especially in developing those habits, you know, it's okay. We're human. We're going to mess up. Give yourself the mulligan and move on.
Yeah, it keeps you doing it. Like if you just have that grace, because if you don't, then you just get so defeated, you just quit. So great advice.
So I say grace, not gummies.
There you go. Maybe I can sell that online in social media. A new bottle of grace pills. There you go. Thank you very much for that. Nick, let's go to you.
I mean, there's always so much to kind of unpack, and you have one thought and then 3 people speak and you've got 10 more. One thing, everybody, if you read or watch any sort of sci-fi, everybody travels back in time. Well, what if I step on a butterfly and the butterfly effect, changes my present? Well, what if you made a small change today what are the impacts that might have on your future. So it's a lot of kind of zooming into what do I need to do today, zooming back out to what does next week, next month, next year look like, and holding those in a healthy level of tension. You can't possibly predict every situation, and if you try, you will lose your mind. But you can, set some guardrails. If you're worried about not being able to make that decision to jump out of bed and go to the gym, put your shoes out, pack your bag the night before. You can protect yourself from yourself with some reliability. And it is that, well, just give me 5 minutes. Just give me, just sit down and answer the first question on the test, or review one job posting a day, or whatever small, manageable, realistic goal you can set. You'll oftentimes find, well, now I'm in the groove and I'm going to keep going. The advice for writing I always got was never stare at a blank page. Put something there, and then you're walking into something that already feels like it's moving. And if you've got an ideal where you're going, you're aiming that way. And yes, the way you talk to yourself certainly matters. We talked last week a little bit. A goal is not necessarily pass fail. But I've seen in the chat, progress, not perfection. Are you taking steps? Are you improving? You bring it to mind every day, and sooner or later you're going to get annoyed with it and stop, or you're going to get annoyed that you're not doing it and take action. If it's in your face every day, you've got it written on the steering wheel, on your bathroom mirror, and you let that kind of seep into, this is where I'm going.
And yeah, great advice, because the best advice I got from a writer was, don't stare at that blank page. Just start writing, and eventually you'll connect to that creativity and you'll be off and running. So thank you very much for that. Lisa, welcome to Work Cookie. Let's go to you.
Hi, thank you so much. I did join a little bit late, so I'll try not to repeat something that's been said before, but I really resonated with what LindaAnn was talking about in terms of making lists. There's two things that I'm really, really good at. One is making lists, and the other one is keeping spreadsheets. So years ago, don't even remember how long ago, I started a spreadsheet where I track my weight. I literally have a spreadsheet. It's now probably 7 or 8 years worth of data, but I weigh myself first thing in the morning, every single morning. Obviously, if not, I almost sometimes think about taking my bathroom scale with me when I travel, but I have yet to do that. But then I track it on my spreadsheet, and I don't actually care what the number is. I don't. What I care about is, did it change from yesterday, and why? And what am I going to do today to make sure that that trend is going in the direction that I would prefer for it to go in? So it's, I don't obsess about it. It sounds like I do, but I don't. I really don't obsess about it. It's really just making sure that I'm staying on track and not allowing things to get really out of control where it makes it very, very difficult. One of the things somebody was talking about, New Year's resolutions and, wanting to get into better shape. I absolutely loathe going to gyms. I've never been a gym rat. I'm a walker. I'm a runner. The whole gym thing. It doesn't appeal to me because I'm very self-conscious. And one of the things that I heard recently was that so many people make New Year's resolution. I'm going to go to the gym X number of times a week. They get gym memberships in January. By the third Friday, statistically, by the third Friday in January, most people have abandoned their New Year's resolutions. So for those of you who are like me, I'm actually counting the days down now. For those of you who are like me and really hate going to gyms, the third or fourth Friday in January is the time to start. It's when just about everybody else has dropped out. But the thing that really resonated with me was what LindaAnn was talking about in terms of making lists. So I make lists. I have multiple lists going at all times. And, sometimes I'll break it down. Here's the list that I want to do today. And I sometimes suffer from that same thing. I haven't crossed anything off. Well, I came to the same conclusion that LindaAnn did. Rather than being demoralized about what I didn't cross off, I will sometimes add to my list. Sometimes it's in the middle of the day, sometimes it's later in the day. I'll write down what I did do. I took a shower this morning. Put that on the list and cross it off. I had 3 phone calls that I had to deal with, a student problem or something like that. That was not planned. That was not on my list. But I wrote those down because those are things that I did. I chose to do them. They were things that I wanted to do, things that I needed to do, things that I ended up doing that kept me from doing some of the other things that were on my list of things to do. So I give myself, and I love the word that was just used, I give myself the grace. I write on that list, these are the things that I did do. So it's not that empty page. It's not that I didn't do anything. It's not that I have failed in today because I didn't cross anything off the list. Yes, it's absolutely, thank you, Amani. It's celebrating the small wins, no matter how small they are. But it's something to keep yourself motivated that you did accomplish something today. May not have been what you started off to, but the list also helps to keep you honest. When you start looking at the things that are on that list, why am I not doing this? Am I finding excuses not to do that? So it does kind of remind you that, yeah, that might not be my favorite thing to do, but yes, it's still there. It's a reminder that I do need to do that. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. Stop making excuses and just go do it. Thank you.
Well, it really does sound like you're creating a really positive mindset for creating these positive habits.
Yeah, I do try to approach life with a more positive mindset. I do believe in grace. I try to give myself enough grace without getting to the point of allowing myself to procrastinate forever. And about that blank sheet of paper, somebody once told me that if you're having a writer's block and you're staring at a sheet of paper that you haven't written anything on, write down in the beginning. Just start with that. Just in the beginning. Nothing may, but you have now something on that blank page.
There you go. Thank you very much for that, Lisa. LindaAnn, let's go to you.
Yeah, the whole blank page thing is interesting. When I remember struggling, like when I was a kid, to write that book report or whatever that was, and it was so intimidating, and you had to, and I think the most paralyzing thing is to try to come up with the right beginning or whatever. And so as I was raising kids, they would come home and they would talk about whatever, and I always kept a little sticky pad. And they would be telling me, I say, well, what's going on in the book? And they would say, whatever. And I'd say, okay, write that down. I would give them a little sticky, right? And so we'd talk, and then they had this whole series of sticky notes that they could work from. And even if it was homework or something like that, so we could talk about it, and then they had something to start from, and it wasn't such a paralyzing process. I think, but getting back to habits, one way to look at this, if you look at Alcoholics Anonymous, right? AA, right? They work with people to create a different habit for themselves, right? It's a habit of not consuming alcohol, and their mantra is one day at a time, right? And I can make it through today, and that's all I need to worry. That's all I've got, and that's all I need to worry about, right? And then to understand that as humans, we're not going to be perfect, and to accept that about ourselves. We can't ever get there, right? That's part of the deal we have being human, and understand that relapse is part of the recovery, right? We're recovering from our bad habits, and we are probably going to relapse at some time, whether it's to eat that bacon sandwich, or to have the ice cream, or just say, okay, it's okay to do it once in a while, whatever that is for you, but to understand that that's part of the recovery process, and then start again. And then it's kind of like when, I don't know, anybody who's athletic, like if you've ever played tennis or whatever, and when you get it right, like when you hit the ball in that sweet spot on the bat or the tennis racket or whatever that is, and you go, that's what it feels like when it's really good. And then it's a little while before it happens again. But if you keep doing it, that space between those times becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. And
There you go.
that's all you can, that's the best you can do, right?
Well, that's a great way to start. Thank you very much for that. Lee, let's go back to you.
I just want to just kind of build off of what LindaAnn said, just because I know we're almost at time, but just to end this on a high point, something that Tim said too about giving yourself grace. So many people, when they're trying to meet a goal, create a habit, whatever else, they fall off the wagon and they give up. They get disgusted with themselves. They beat themselves up and I'm a failure. I can't do anything. And they give up. And some people honestly are looking for an excuse to give up. Let's be fair. But some people they're just that down on themselves. Give yourself that grace. Understand that we're human and we make mistakes. It's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get up. Let's focus on the right thing. Let's keep getting up. You don't fail till you fail to get up. Okay, I had today I didn't, I've been doing, since Jeremy turned us on to this Augmandino book. One day I didn't hit my 3. I was like, oh man, crap, I totally forgot. You know what I did? The next day I picked the book up and I read again. And I got 3 that day. And the next day after that. And, okay, so I missed one. I realized it. I wasn't getting out of bed to go read it, but I didn't beat myself up over it. And the next day I picked it up and I kept going. That's what you have to do. You have to realize that tomorrow's another day. You can start again. You can continue to go. You can continue to do that. And it's another win. And including the fact that you did it again is a win. Every time you get up is a win. And so let's give ourselves the grace for that. And let's give ourselves the credit for that, okay, we scraped our knees, but we got up and we finished the race.
Well said.
I got to go. So
there you go. Thank you very much for that, Lee. Always great to see you. LindaAnn, we'll go to you next, then Amani, but just a little bit of a heads up. We've got about 4 minutes left. LindaAnn, over to you.
I just want to say it's really important, especially if you're spending time on things that are important to you, if you decided to spend conscious time on that, to not give up on yourself. I mean, think about that, right? If there are certain times when I've looked at things that are challenging and I go, I'm not giving up on myself. I mean, you have to at least support yourself if no one else.
Yeah, there's only one of me. I can't give up on myself. There you go. Thank you for that. Amani, always lovely to see you. Let's go to you.
Thank you. So I got tired of being a keyboard warrior, and I was like, let me just put my hand up just to say this one thing of, we usually forget to count ourselves when you're counting. You're like, oh, there are 3 people there, plus me, yeah, but then you first count the other people. So one thing that I've been practicing for like, I guess 4 years, 5 years now, is saying more yeses to myself and then no to the things that really don't work for me or other people outside of me, because most of the times you will speak to other people the way you don't even speak to yourself. And then you will get to do something, you say yes to other people, yet you say no to yourself. Somebody talked about things like, I usually cheat on my dad. When I'm feeling it, I want it, I'm gonna say yes to myself. You know what? I'm just gonna have this 1 scoop of ice cream because I need it. It's self-care. Usually I tell myself it's self-care to always say yes to myself. So I just want to put out that point of the whole negative feelings that we have about ourselves and the talk that we talk to ourselves. Just ask yourself, is this something that you will be even talking to somebody else that you love? If it's not something that you want, say to somebody else that you love, then give it to yourself first. Fill in your cup first before you even fill into other people's cup. Because, hey, I don't even feel like I'm convinced if I find somebody talking to me when they don't even have love for themselves, because I'm kind of like confused. How are you claiming love for me when you're not even showing that to yourself first? So more yeses to ourselves internally, and to others around us. That's what I just wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Manny. And I can't, I remember when I was teaching young actors, I didn't have to be the mean, cruel instructor. They did a great job on their own. They would beat themselves up all the time. I had to be the positive guy. So thank you for that little reminder. Jeremy, were you able to find that quote?
I was, Tom. How'd you ask, friend? This is from, this is another Ogmandino book, The Greatest Miracle in the World. I recommend the book. I just finished reading it. It's short and it's relevant, highly relevant to about probably 4 of the main points that were made today. So the quote is, "Our mind is the greatest creation on earth, and it can generate the most sublime happiness for its owner, or it can destroy him. Yet, although we have been given the secret of how to control it for our happiness and benefit, we still function completely ignorant of its potential, like the most stupid of animals." For some reason, I have bookmarked that page. Think about a habit you want to do. Think about something that just became a good habit. Think of how cool it will be with this great new habit that you have, that if you don't do it, you just feel something's missing. And that when you do it, you just feel energized. And no longer is it a habit. It's just something like that you do. Our title for next week's podcast is Principles Over Uncertainty. Live by new instincts and transform your outcomes. I think there'll be a couple Seinfeld quotes in that one. Tom?
There you go. Thank you very much for that, Jeremy. And great discussion this week. A lot of stuff for me. I've learned a lot. Once again, thank you all very much. And you're absolutely right. Like, just the good habits that I've, been bringing into my life in the last 6 months have really made a change. So hopefully 2025 is a year of better habits. So thank you very much for that, Jeremy. Our time is up. So if you want to count us out, we'll see everyone back here in 1 week's time.
Next week, everyone, counting out at 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.